What if I tell you you pay me 3K and I guarantee you 10%? Would that actually work?
If you were able to do that, if you put that into into a contract, like I would totally do that like right now.
Today I'll share with you the best approach I know on how to make money out of thin air. It has nothing to do with making money on YouTube, it's not a trick, and there is absolutely nothing shady about it. I swear you won't need to even buy a course, so you may wonder what's the catch here, right? Well, it requires work, and chances are that it will make you quite uncomfortable at first. Yet, it has the power to drastically change your life for the better and potentially make you super rich. Sounds too good to be true? Well, stick with me. I'll let you be your own judge. If you're new here, I'm Jeremy Chatelain, founder of Quickmail, a tool that helps you start more conversation by emails, which you can find out at quickmail.io. I produce a video every week about business to help you be more successful as an entrepreneur. So if you want clear and actionable advice on business, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind. Right, the formula to make money is much simpler than what most people think. It's a simple trade between two parties. One is willing to give you money in exchange of something of value to them. That's really all there is. Which means that the only thing you really need to do in order to create money is to find out what the other party wants. And that's what I will share with you today. It's a simple way to figure out what people will be willing to pay. But first, some ground rules. If you're looking for B2C advice, which means you're business selling to a consumer, I don't think this is a good video for you. I'm going to focus purely on B2B and SaaS. Why B2B instead of B2C? For succeeding in B2C, you need to have a really large audience, touching a lot of people and capturing a fraction of the value you're actually generating. That's a lot of work, and most people always switch from one thing to another, so it's very difficult as well to sustain. In contrast, I prefer B2B, where people also have problems, but there is far less competitions. That means that leaves a lot of place where you can come in and provide a lot of value that no one else is providing. It's a much easier game, and it may sound more intimidating, but it is actually even simpler, I will say, than making money in B2C. When you make money in B2C, you have a lot of efforts that goes into doing it, and you may end up with like $5 or $6 or those sort of like value, and so therefore you need to go for the number. When you go in B2B, if you have like 10 clients, you could already be making, thousands of dollars every month. So it's a much more rewarding experience when it comes to ratio between effort and reward. The other thing is we're going to concentrate on SaaS. Why SaaS? Well, let me start with what is SaaS in a nutshell. SaaS is basically software as a service, which means you're providing access to a certain service and people will pay you a monthly recurring fee or yearly recurring fee, depends. That way you don't need to reproduce another sale the next month. It sort of like keeps accumulating and sort of like compounds. So if you add a new client, the previous client still keep paying a subscription. So that's the idea. And so for the same amount of effort, I would go for something that is simpler, and therefore my preference for B2B and SaaS. And like I mentioned, this may be scarier, but if you follow my simple step process, then that should be no harder than trying to sell to your friends or to other people in your network. Anyway, so those are the ground rules. So the idea will be to pick up a market, selecting who your target audience is. Usually those are companies that you want to serve. Maybe that's, landscaping companies, because you happen to know a bit of this industry somehow and actually like the people in this industry. That could be startup. I know that's one persona for my product, for example. Or that could be dentist or restaurants. Although I wouldn't recommend doing those sort of businesses for the reason I'm going to say a bit later. So first you need to figure out what's my niche. Where do I actually want to play? And you have a series of criteria that you can use in order to figure out if this is a good niche. Like, what's the point in making all that effort and then suddenly realizing that people in this niche actually are not making money? It's very difficult for them. Their margin is super thin, and so therefore the money that you can capture by offering some value is very small. Unless your product is able to generate a vast amount of money for them, you're not going to be able to capture a lot of value. So I will encourage you to think about how much money is in this market, in this niche, and try not to find like a too broad market. Don't do like, mobile communication, advertisement companies, or sales organizations. Those are really too broad to start with. So you need to start in a much smaller niche market. Maybe you go after, let's say, the recruiting industry in UK for tech companies. So that way you got a sort of a niche market that will help you as well to determine who you need to contact in this market later on. So money in that market, very important. What's the size of this market? Does it actually make sense to address it at the moment? I wouldn't worry too much about that if this is a good enough size, because you could always then expand. So for the recruitment, it could be then you start, providing recruitment agency in US, or you start expanding to maybe temporary worker, or, you have ways to make it work once you got a solid foundation that works. So at the beginning, just try to narrow it down. Once you know there is some money in that market, you also need to figure out, is that market contactable by email or phone call or something? Like, are you able to contact them? If you're not, that's going to be pretty difficult. If there is only 10 companies providing that in the world, then that may be a difficult market to crack, and the barrier to entry will probably be pretty high. The second step is to have conversations with your target audience. Like, in that market, who do you actually contact? Do you contact the CEO? Do you contact the sales representative? Do you contact the support people? Do you contact the dev people? You need to know who you want to contact in this organization. In essence, the people you're contacting are going to be the people who will benefit the most from your product, one way or another. So you have to pick carefully. Whose problems do you actually want to solve? Do you want to solve the business owner problem, which I recommend because it's easier in terms of getting the money, because they are the decision maker? Or do you want to, contact and solve the problems of the managers? Maybe there are some managers, specific problems that you can solve. Or do you want to solve the developer problem? Or pick someone in the organization that you want to talk to and you want to solve the problem. They all have their pros and cons. Like, the business owner is probably easier, closer to the money and so on, but he may be completely disconnected from the actual execution on the business. So he may push you down to maybe their manager, who will then assess, the value of your product. The point is that you're not quite at this stage yet. You're trying to discover and uncover a problem or potential problem that you can address and therefore solve. And by solving it, will generate a lot of money, whether it's in cost savings or it's in additional revenue for the business. And that's the sort of value, then the percentage of that value that you can then capture for yourself. So pick who you want to talk to. Then the next step is to make a list of the people you want to talk to and contact them. You can contact them through LinkedIn, for example. Just mention that you're doing some research and try to connect with them and see if they would accept, a short call in order to understand better their problems and see if, if you can make their life better. Or you can use emails. If you do so, I will recommend you use my own software. I'm totally biased, of course, but you could go to quickmail.io, check it out, and then the idea is you have a list of prospects you want to contact and you send them some emails. Bear in mind that if you want to be successful, don't try to sell them anything. Just focus on starting a conversation. How can you actually open a channel, a communication channel with them, so you can start to get to know them better? That's really the goal here, is to understand the other person's struggle so you can potentially find a solution for them. The next step is to obviously have interviews, conversation with them. And until now, everyone kind of get the idea and know what to do. But when it comes to actually doing interviews and finding what the real problems are, it's very often very difficult for people to find an idea that other people will be willing to pay for. Over the years, I developed a certain system or way to actually ask questions to uncover those valuable ideas they will be willing to pay for. And what's important here at this stage when you're going to have a conversation with someone is not to try to force feed your agenda. It's more a game of inspector trying to uncover some of the problems, and it may not be going in the direction you want, and that is totally fine. An example would be you may be really good in marketing and suddenly realize that their problem is more into product management or scheduling or resource allocation. It's fine, just go where they go. And I'm going to give you a framework so you can simply follow that simple structure that will really help you uncover some of those ideas that people will be willing to give you money for. So let's say now you have your prospect on the phone. I know it's nerve-wracking, and what kind of advice can I give you at this stage if you're having, massive anxiety? Well, the first thing is you don't have to do cold calling. You can agree on a time. And I know at that time that's going to be really nerve-wracking. I remember my first interview of a potential customer was absolutely nerve-wracking. I pressed the number on the phone and I was so hoping that no one will answer. I don't know, for whatever reason I'll be so relieved, but then that person actually responded. And the call was awkward, but yet it lasted an hour. And so I was like, how the hell, that's a long time to speak with a stranger you never talked to in the past. That's the definition of a stranger, by the way. And so I carried on doing it after probably 30 calls like that. And obviously that wasn't the same day, it was over a period of maybe 2 weeks. Then after 30 calls, it's like, yeah, no big deal, but going over, try to give yourself, let's do 10, or try something at the beginning. And the funny thing is I recontacted this person, my very first interview, and I told her that, you were the first person I interviewed. And so I was extremely nervous. And she told me I didn't realize. And I think, sometimes we can be too much self-aware of our own anxiety or stress or difficulties that, for other people doesn't matter. So what's important really is when you're going to go on a call is to focus purely on them. And if you follow this simple framework, that's going to be very easy for you. So the first thing is you pick up the phone at a certain time that you and your prospect agreed. And then the idea is to make it their call, not your call. It's really their call. So, when you're speaking and you're sort of waiting for the other person to finish the conversation so you can interject and then finally say what you want to say, this is not a discovery call. In order for making a discovery call where you can reach to a point where they see what you could offer them, and so therefore they're willing to give you money in exchange of a solution to their problem, you need to be listening. There's no step-by-step that will go until the money. I'm going to give you some framework and some useful questions to get you going, but you have to listen to know if you need to turn right or if you need to turn left. You need to be able to bounce on what they're saying, because like I mentioned, they could be taking you in a completely different direction, one that you didn't expect. And usually this is a good thing. So pay attention and focus purely on what they're saying, not what you want to say. So here's the framework. You pick up the phone and obviously you thank them for, spending a bit of time. You give them a background, but again, the call is not about you. So it'll be something like that. It'll be like, hey, whatever as a person, thanks so much for jumping on a call with me. I'd like to go over a few questions to really understand your business and hopefully help you either save money or make more money. Although that may not be always the case. You may not necessarily talk to business owners. Sorry, it's my bite here. But you basically say the call is about them. and you're only doing research and your aim is to figure out something that will help them and make their life better. And then you ask them, like, is now a good time to carry on? And usually they say yes, and if they say no, it's better than say no now than, being upset during the call and not giving you the information. So you need to have them on board. Once you get them on board, then this is a very, very simple way to keep the attention of someone on the phone, is to simply be concerned about them instead of you. So an example of being concerned with them is to ask them what is their objective, what is their goal, what are they doing for reaching out those goals. Like, you start talking about what they're interested in. The opposite would be, let's say that I'm really good in marketing, so I will ask them questions about their marketing strategies, like how is your marketing doing, what do you do for marketing and stuff like that. That's talking about your agenda, that's talking about what you want to talk about. If you want that call to be productive and reach gold, which is basically deep enough to, it's like digging deep enough to find that nugget of gold, which is the value you're trying to uncover, you're going to have to go where they lead you, not where you want to go. And I've been doing probably 70 interviews and didn't find any idea, like anything really worth paying for. And as I reflected with my mentor at the time, Carl Mattiola, kudos to him, such a great star, we were role-playing. And I say, Carl, I can't find an idea that people will be willing to pay for. And I've been doing like 70 interviews. What am I doing wrong? People stay on the phone with me with like 45 minutes, an hour, and they explain me everything. I know their business inside out. And yet I can't find a way to find an idea that they will be willing to pay for. And so I suggested that we reverse the role. It's like, look, I interviewed 70 business owners. Go ahead, ask me questions. I'll be able to answer because I know their concern. I know what they're trying to reach. And so he said, okay, fine enough. Let's play along. And he asked me one question. He said, well, tell me, what you're trying to achieve this year or something around those lines. And so I told him, like, yeah, I'm trying to do X, Y, Z. He asked me a second question. I said, well, I guess most of the people answer that. He asked me a third question, and that's it. I couldn't answer. And, I wasn't that great in marketing at that time. One could argue I'm still not great in marketing, but that's not the point. And I say, like, Carl, it's unfair. You're just bringing me to marketing because you're really good in marketing. And then he replied to me, it's like, you brought me there. And then I look at the answer that I gave him, and it's like, holy hell, yes, that's exactly what I was doing. And so at that time, I say, I know what to do. And what I was doing, it's a typical mistake that pretty much everyone I talk to is making when it comes to doing those interviews. I was trying to discover horizontally, which means I was trying to understand the whole business. So I was basically using them as free training for me to understand their market. So I say, okay, well, how do you deal with customers? Where do you get customers from? How do you invoice them? And what service do you propose? It's all the sort of thing, trying to uncover, like, it's like someone lifting rocks, like, is there an idea here? No. Is there an idea here? No. And of course, for the person answering, it's quite tedious because they basically teach you the entire business and you're not really able to help them. And the reason why is because you're only assessing the surface level. Now, if you want gold is not at the surface level, it's quite deep, and so you need to dig vertically. The difference looks like that. Horizontally would be, tell me about how you're doing shipping, or, okay, good, okay, I understand that. Now tell me how you're doing client nurturing. Okay, I understand that. Now tell me how you're acquiring new leads. Okay, I understand. And so you basically goes from one department to another, one activities to another, one department to another. And digging vertically looks more like this. It's like, what are some of the activities that you do for marketing? And they tell you A, B, and C. And you say, that's interesting. Which one of them is most important to you? And then they'll tell you probably A. And you say, okay, great. What do you do actually to fulfill A? And they tell you, well, we do, that, and that. And you say, okay, great. Which one of those one is the most important for you? Or which one actually leads to the better results for A? And they tell you, well, it's obviously this one. And you say, okay, well, how can you double that? And then you carry on this little path, and bear in mind that at this stage, after maybe 10, 15 minutes, I went quite deep and don't understand anything about the rest of their business. I don't know how they're invoicing. I don't know how they're acquiring clients. I don't know how they're doing XYZ. But there's one thing for sure is I'm talking exactly about what they're interested. Like, how can they actually maximize something that is already working for them? And you'll take them on a journey and on a sort of like reflection journey as to, yeah, this is this department that is actually, providing me the best revenue, maybe if they're looking for increasing the revenue. And if you're hiring, if you're interviewing a manager, they will tell you other things like, maybe shipping on time is what is on their minds. How they do that well is very difficult to, track all those tasks. Well, how do you track tasks at the moment? Well, we're using Asana, whatever, but it's really annoying because the developers are using GitHub, and so the communication is annoying, so I have to keep on entering tasks. Okay, well, how do you enter tasks? How long does that actually take you? Well, it's taking me probably a good 5-15 minutes per day, or even 20 minutes, and sometimes I'm sick, so I can't really catch up, and then someone else has to replace me, and they don't really know where we're at, so there's so much inefficiency that is okay, well, globally you're losing 2 hours per week? Yeah, okay, that's 2 hours per week. At your salary, that leads to potentially, a certain amount of money. So if we had something to synchronize automatically between Asana and GitHub, you will be saving 2 hours a day. And then that's what digging vertically is. Bear in mind, I don't know what the rest of his day is. I don't know how he's managing the team. I don't know, how he's setting priorities on the product map and all those sort of thing. And that is what digging vertically is. And that is where you will find the money. So let me give you the framework that I use for uncovering this. What's important as well, the last thing I want to say about this is you don't have to just do it at the beginning of your journey. You can definitely do it once you have already a business, and basically I use it myself on a regular basis, even though I'm already having a business. Why? Well, I can uncover better the new problems in the market. I can figure out in which direction we should extend our product. Well, it's a very useful skill to have. Okay, so here is the framework. The first thing you ask is if they can give you 3 goals that they're trying to achieve by the end of the year. It's convenient. We're at the beginning of the year, so that's what they're trying to achieve. If you're at the end of the year, figure out the same thing, like what are 3 goals you're trying to achieve for next year? Something like that. The idea here is we take them to be result-oriented, not activity-oriented at this stage. We want to figure out what is important for your business. I can't guess it, I don't know it, but you do. So tell me, what are the most important things that you're trying to achieve with your business? Sometimes they will tell you, often they will tell you it's about, money, but again, depends who you're talking to. If it's a manager, maybe it's about timelines, achieving things on time, delivering things on time. Maybe developer also have some other problems, maybe integration or documentation, whatever. So people will have ideas of goals. If they don't, it could well be that this is just not a good person to ask. It could be that this will be a waste of time because they're not quite sure what they're trying to achieve. So even if you present them with a solution, they won't really know if it's useful for them or not. They just maybe want to try it, but that's not really where the money is, right? You need to figure out someone who knows what they actually want to achieve. Once you got those goals, you're going to say, okay, you got goal A, goal B, goal C, maybe. You're going to make it about them, not about you. You're going to ask them to pick up which one, if you can only reach one of those 3 goals, which one would it be? So there you're making very clear that you're interested in only talking to goals that are important to them and the most important to them. So you take them on a journey where they're the hero. They're the one that you want to satisfy, not you. And they will tell you. They will simply tell you, well, definitely it's goal A. That's what we've been trying to achieve for maybe 2 years, and it's very difficult, it's challenging, it's whatever is the problem. And then the next step, once you figure out what the outcome they're trying to reach, you ask them what are some of the activities that they do in order to achieve A. And they will tell you, they will say, well, right now we're doing referrals, we're doing affiliates, we're doing whatever. And you say, great, out of all those activities, we're going to still zero in again on them. You're going to say, out of all those activities, which one is providing you with the best results? They're going to maybe pause a second. And by the way, every time someone pauses, it means you're closer to getting to that goal. Because then you make them think about possibilities and things they may not have crystallized in their thinking yet. So they're going to tell you, well, I guess, or they know for sure, that this is this activity that brings us, the most money, or the one that actually brings us closer to goal A. And so you say, okay, at this stage, you can carry on digging deeper, or you can start throwing some objectives, like what would it take to actually double that? Let's say the goal is to increase revenue by 50K. They're trying to get more leads. Right now they're using Facebook ads to get some leads, and that's their primary channel. So we're at that stage yet. And you say, well, how many leads do you actually get, through Facebook? And they're going to tell you like 17. What's your cost of acquisition for one lead? So you kind of understand how much, they need to spend in order to acquire those 50K extra revenue. And then you say, well, okay, based on that calculation, you need X number of leads through Facebook. What would it take for you to get twice as much? And then suddenly they're thinking like, oh yeah, well, we can't really because XYZ. Now, here's the interesting thing is, if you can prevent that XYZ from happening, that means you can basically double their leads through Facebook ads. And that's where the money is, because suddenly if you allow them to double their number of leads through Facebook ads, you enable them to make suddenly 100K instead of 50K that they plan on. So now you got their attention. They're really interested into that. And so you don't have to solve it, which is the interesting thing is you could say like, how would you actually do it? Like, if you could do everything in the world and just wave your magic wand, what would you actually do so that you can, double the number of leads you get from Facebook ads? And then he could tell you maybe like they need to convert at X%, or we need to find a better marketer, or whatever comes, that they see, because that is basically them telling you what they would value. And now you understand as well how much they're actually willing to pay for, because you understand how much of what is the impact of that change directly on their goal. And usually the goal are financial one way or another, whether it's in cost savings, like saving a lot of time, or in extra revenue one way or another, like shipping more products maybe, which will then lead to more revenue. So you could always ask the line of sight between what they are doing, what their objective is, and how much money that's going to generate for the company, because that will allow you to understand how much value your solution will create, because you're going to have to take a small portion of that value. If you're a good rule of thumbs will be 10%. So if you manage to generate like 50,000 extra revenue, then you just take like 5,000. So you sell then a solution of 5,000 in order for them to gain 50K. And that sounds like that. It's like, well, it sounds like if we do this, that will bring you 50K in revenue. Is that correct? And they may tell you, well, not quite, because you're missing XYZ. You say, okay, well, everything factored in, then that would be like 25K. And they may say yes. So what if I provide you the solution we discussed for 2,500, which is like 10% of it? Would you actually be willing to buy it? And then this is the interesting question, because that's your validation questions. Are they basically okay to go there with you and basically just validate that you find a problem that is worth paying for? And so if you come at this stage and you don't find anything, and sometimes this happens, they say, well, okay, it's great, we got project A, this is the most important, or objective A, goal A, and we do those activities are the one that has the most, chances of getting revenues. And somehow you guys are exploring this and it doesn't work for whatever reason. You can still come back one step and then go back another step. So it's like one step up and one step back. So that will be like, if you're looking at activity A, which is like we mentioned, maybe like Facebook ads, maybe another activity is through referrals. So if you can't get to a point where you find money in activity A, then you could always back up to the goal and then just say like, okay, the second activity you mentioned was about referral, how's that working right now? Do you get enough of them? Like, what are you currently doing to get more referrals? And so again, you go back and you can go multiple branch down. The idea is you can see a sort of tree where you got the trunk, which is basically their goal, and then that splits into multiple activities. And then each activity can also then split to more activities or some other things. And basically you're just navigating, but every time you're just asking them, all right, we got a choice between going exploring A, B, or C. Which one do you want to explore with me? And that's basically what keeps their attention during the call, so they're really with you, and if you listen to what they're saying, you will go wherever they will take you. That's useful for them because it gives them a sort of break where they can suddenly think about their activity, their day-to-day work, what they're actually doing at a higher level, and that is the value that you're providing when you're doing those sort of interviews, which is way less self-centered or egoistic as when you're actually searching horizontally. At the end of doing all those interviews, you should be having a certain number of problems that you can address with potential revenue associated to it. At that stage, you're not really finished if you actually want to go and create the money, but I think we'll see that for another episode. If you like it, thumbs up. If I got enough thumbs up, then I'll just do a follow-up of this episode. If you have any questions, just post below and I will answer them all personally. That's it for today, and I see you next time.